Yo, Royan's coming at you with a new mini lesson. And today, we're going to talk about author's purpose. Now, we touched on author's purpose in Writer's Workshop earlier in the year. We talked about why an author writes a specific piece. But that doesn't just apply to what you're writing. It applies to what you're reading as well. Now, we're talking about narrative nonfiction right now in our My View books. And the first piece that you need to, and I'm going to stop you right here, you need to go listen to Mrs. Mast read Reach the Moon by Buzz Aldrin. What's the name of it? Reaching for the Moon. You need to go listen to that. I assigned it. You need to listen to that before watching this, because I'm using some of the excerpts from that to help explain author's purpose, to teach you author's purpose. And we are inferring why the author wrote this. If you remember the mini lesson yesterday, we had the five steps of inferencing. Reading the text, review the text, read the question, list relevant details, look for patterns and relationships, and then why do these all fit together? What's the point? And for author's purpose, we're trying to figure out, did the author write this for to persuade you, to inform you, or entertain you? Okay, and it's as simple as that. Now, I'm going to be looking at a text from page 24 of your My View book, or I'm sorry, yes, page 24. And it is paragraph 13. And if you want to open up your book and follow along with that, that's fine. I will also have a reading of me, or a clip of me reading it inserted right here. When I finished high school, my father wanted me to go to the Naval Academy, but I chose West Point instead. I wasn't interested in the Navy. I wanted to be in the Air Force, and I thought West Point would help get me there. That is on page 20. Or, I'm sorry, page 24. Okay. By now you've listened to me read paragraph 13 on page 24. And first we're going to talk about how to infer author's purpose. I'm going to put some things on this anchor chart here behind me. And of course, I will take a picture of this and upload it along with this assignment as well. So, author's purpose. One of the first things you need to look at when you're thinking of author's purpose, especially in a nonfiction piece. Remember, nonfiction means it's a true writing. Fiction is something like fantasy or folk tales or just something fake. Nonfiction is the true stories. Specifically, we're looking at autobiographies and biographies. An autobiography is something written by someone, by that person. It's a story of their life written by that person. So it'd be me writing the story of Mr. Royans. But if someone else wrote the story of my life, that would be a biography. And some of the things that you'll find, especially in nonfiction works, is text features. And text features, for those of you that aren't super aware, are things like pictures, graphs, charts, headings, titles, captions on pictures. It's those things that help you understand a text. Okay? And then another thing you need to look for in a nonfiction narrative, and the same with inferring anything, is the big idea and details. I'm going to write that. Big idea, write that in all caps, and details. Now what that means is you read the text, you read the excerpt, you read the paragraph. What's the big idea of the paragraph? And find the details that support that. Okay? And then the third thing that we're going to, and there's a whole list of things, but we're just going to talk about these three today, is the story elements. Okay? Now, when I say story, you can apply the word story to nonfiction because it's a story of someone's life. So what are the story elements of what we're reading? And those are just the three that we're going to touch on today for this portion of the mini lesson. Now, like I said yesterday, the 5 inference skills, 5 skills of making an inference. We read the text, we viewed the text. Now we're asking the question. And my question that I'm answering today is, why did the author write this? Why did he write it? Well, that's what we're going to answer. So first and foremost, remember, text clues plus background knowledge equals an inference. My absolute number one thing that I am drawing upon, the background knowledge I am drawing upon for this lesson, is the fact that Buzz Aldrin is a famous astronaut. He has been to the moon, one of the 3 people that set foot on the moon. That is in my knowledge backpack. I know Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, and the other guy, I don't, poor dude never gets any recognition. People, I'm sure there's some space nerds that know his name off the top of their heads, but I don't know his name off the top of my head. Maybe if I heard it, I'd be like, oh, yeah. So, I'm going to look at the book. And when I look at the book, I've got mine over here to draw upon. The first thing I see is a text feature. And that text feature, my eye is instantly drawn to it, is a picture of a jet. And that's a detail to me. A picture of a jet. Why does Buzz have a picture of a jet? In his narrative, in his autobiography. Why? Okay. And then I'm going to start from the top. He tells a story about his dad, what his dad wanted him to do right out of college, or out of high school, right? His dad wanted him to join the Navy, go to the Naval Academy. Okay. But he wasn't interested in the Navy, was he? No, he wasn't interested in the Navy at all. He wanted to be in the Air Force. He wanted to be in the Air Force. So, a picture of a jet, wanted to be in the Air Force. Okay. And he thought that West Point was the best way to get there. Okay. Why? Now, I'm drawing on my background knowledge, and I have the fortune of being older and knowing, like I come from a military house. I know what West Point is. For those of you that don't know, West Point is it's a celebrated, military academy where all the officers go. If you graduate from West Point, you're the great, all the great generals come from there, sort of thing. Fun fact, I have a buddy from high school, Roberto Santos. He teaches philosophy at West Point. Pretty cool. He also gets me to try and play Warhammer 40K with him all the time, but that's such an expensive hobby. It's a little war game with miniatures and lots of dice. I'll stick to Dungeons and Dragons for my wargaming. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We are looking at all these details now. I said there's a picture of a jet. That's a text feature, picture of a jet. And I found some details that he wanted to be in the Air Force. He was not interested in the Navy. His dad wanted him to, right out of high school, go to the Naval Academy. But he didn't want to. And he thought West Point would help him get there. Help him get where? Well, I know that there's a picture of a jet, and I'm drawing my background knowledge here. I know that Buzz is a famous astronaut. That's what I know. That's inside my brain. I know that Buzz is a famous astronaut. And what are astronauts famous for? Well, they're famous for flying, right? Flying rockets. They fly the rockets up into space. So I see a picture of a jet. I know that Buzz is a famous astronaut. So that means he probably wanted to fly. And I see the picture of a jet, and then I think of him wanting to be in the Air Force. He didn't want to be in the Navy. It says that he wanted to be in the Air Force. It specifically says, I wanted to be in the Air Force. And I know that if you want to fly a jet, like there's a picture of, let's show you guys this one. The Air Force is where you enlist if you want to fly, right? Go fly airplanes. You want to be an airplane pilot, you will apply to the Air Force. So he wanted to be in the Air Force, and the Air Force is where you enlist to fly. He thought West Point would help get him there. And then, okay, so we got some big idea. We're still working on what the big idea is here, but we found some details. Now we're going to look at some story elements. And one of the story elements, and I'm not talking about rising action, climax, those sorts of things. I'm talking about an anecdote, which is a little story Buzz tells us. He tells us an anecdote about, his dad wanting him to be in the military, in the Naval Academy. And back in those days, specifically when he was a boy, like a little boy growing up and coming out of high school, to disobey your dad's wishes, I'm drawing on my background knowledge, back then, if you didn't do what your dad wanted you to do, woo, that was often met with disapproval by the family. Now, I'm not saying his family was like that at all. It doesn't sound like they were, but families were very strict back then, and if you didn't do what dad wanted you to do, you were, ooh. So, he has an anecdote talking about and telling us his commitment to flying. He's committed to flying, so much so that he wants to get in the Air Force. So he's not interested in the Navy. What are people in the Navy famous for? Ships, right? In this little story was about what his dad wanted him to do and how he didn't want to do that. So I'm putting all these together. Air Force is where if you enlist to fly planes, I know Buzz is a famous astronaut, that's why it's got a picture of a jet. In the anecdote, he's telling us a little story about his commitment to flying. So, the question is, why did the author write this? The author wrote this to inform us that he wanted to fly. Now we're going to look at another text. I'm going to read it to you, another excerpt from the story. And we're going to do the same exact process over again. Listen to me read this one. Read along. It's on the very first page of the story, page 20. The name my parents gave me was Edwin Eugene. but the name my sister gave me was the one that would stay with me all my life. Since I was the only son, everyone in my family called me brother. But my sister, Fay Ann, a year older than I was, could only manage to say Buzzer. Later it got shortened to Buzz, and no one ever called me anything else. Okay, you should have listened to me read the very first paragraph on page 20. And that paragraph talks about what? It talks about him getting his nickname, right? Okay. Well, what's the author's purpose? Let's refer to our anchor chart real quick. Text features, big ideas, details, story elements. Well, and I kind of reversed the colors on these sticky notes when I wrote them out. I wasn't really paying attention. But let's start with some details. Because remember, read, view the text, read/view the text, read the question, list relevant details, find patterns and relationships. Boom, how do they come together? Text, clues, plus background knowledge equals inference. So it starts off with Buzz telling his real name. Okay? Buzz is telling his real name, and that was not what he went by, though. So he was the only son in the book, and they called him Brother. He's the only boy. They all just called him Brother. But his sister, and in background knowledge activated here, we've all heard little sisters or brothers. Maybe it's in movies or maybe in real life. I've heard it with my daughter calling, she calls her grandma, my wife's mom, my mother-in-law, MAGA, because she can't say grandma. And so we've all heard little kids, really like toddlers, they have trouble saying things because they're still developing how to talk, right? And his little sister calls him Buzzer instead of brother. Like, hey, Buzzer. So that's an interesting detail. Buzzer. And then as time went on, it's one of those things that kind of sticks. And it was shortened to Buzz. Okay. And then after it was shortened to Buzz, nobody else ever called him anything else. No one called him anything else. So, what's the pattern in relationship amongst these? What do I know? Well, I know he was the only boy in the family. And what do you know? What do you notice? Well, you noticed it was a story about his odd name, right? Because how many Buzzes are there in life? And then, how many of you have a nickname out there? We all know that nicknames stick. In junior high, 7th grade, my friends started calling me JR, Jeremy Royans. And that was 25 years, that was 27 years ago. I still go by JR to my friends. I mean, obviously I get called Mr. Royans here. And a new group of friends doesn't call me JR, but they call me Jer Bear over in 4th grade. But JR, that's my nickname. And it still is amongst my group of friends, but it's kind of gone the wayside since I quit working at my old job. But for a long time, JR. So I'm using my background knowledge to say a nickname sticks, right? Maybe some of you have nicknames. Well, let's put them together. He's the only boy in the family, so no one called. Let's say a story about his odd name. No one ever called him anything else. Only boy in family. His real name was Edwin Eugene. Oops. Only son. They called him Brother. sister called him Buzzer. Its had a nickname Sticks, and it's shortened to Buzz. These aren't staying very well, huh? So nickname Sticks, his sister called him Buzzer, shortened to Buzz. And our question is, why did the author write this? Well, isn't it just to tell us how he got his nickname? Why he's called Buzz Aldrin. It informs how he got his nickname. We looked at text. Now, there's no real text features on there. There is a picture of a plane, which kind of makes me think of a buzz because the propeller's spinning. But we looked at details, and the story element, again, is an anecdote, a story about how, story within the story, an anecdote of how he got his name. So, we're looking at how to tell why an author is writing. Is it to inform, persuade, or entertain? And this is to inform, right? It's to inform us how he got his name. Inform us why he went to West Point. And now I want you to try this skill during your independent reading.